I'm Susan Page, Washington Bureau Chief of USA Today, and this is Capitol Download. We're in the White House complex with Dan Pfeiffer, Senior Advisor to President Obama. Thanks so much for being with us.
Thanks for having me, Susan.
You're getting ready for the State of the Union later this month. You've had good news and bad news in the last 24 hours. The good news was the Senate moved ahead with approval of extending unemployment benefits for the long-term unemployed. So Republicans in the House say they want budget offsets before they'll vote on this. Would you propose budget offsets for this first round, this 3-month extension?
We should pass this bipartisan bill in the Senate. That'll give us 3 months to work out how to do it for the whole year.
So if they pass it, if Congress passes it for the 3-month extension, will the White House propose budget offsets for the full year?
Well, we're happy to talk to Congress about how they want to handle this.
So is that a yes or?
We're happy to engage in conversations about how to do it. There are lots of ways to look at doing it, but we're happy to talk to them and try to find a way to get this done because it's important.
So the bad news, a memoir by former Defense Secretary Gates. He describes the White House as politically motivated on national security issues. He says specifically that President Obama moved ahead with the surge in Afghanistan, even though he believed it would fail. Is that true?
That's not true. And look, I have not read the whole book, but I've certainly seen the coverage of it. So of course, there are going to be some disagreements about how we do things. But as it relates to Afghanistan, in that book, Secretary Gates also says he thinks the president made the right decisions.
So what should we expect to hear in the State of the Union this year?
We're going to push really hard for an economy that creates opportunity for everyone.
Dealing with congressional Republicans has been sort of an exercise in frustration for this White House for a couple years. And President Obama talked about maybe that changing with his reelection. That really didn't happen in 2013. Relations didn't really change. Is there any reason to expect them to get better in 2014?
We're going to continue to try to find places where we can work with them, and where we can't work with them, the president's going to use what authority he has to try to move the ball forward.
Do you think there's very much you can do with executive action when you can't get things through the legislature?
I wouldn't tell you that executive action is a substitute for major bipartisan legislation. It's not. We have separation of powers. That's how this country works. But what we're not going to do is wait around for Congress to act. We're going to try to every day move the ball forward, either with what executive authority the president has, but also the president using his office to mobilize the American people, American businesses, American workers to do things that help improve opportunity for all.
You know, you have this incredible perspective because you worked for Barack Obama during the 2008 campaign. You came into the White House. You've had a series of top jobs here. Is there a rhythm to this so that the 6th year is different from the previous 5, either in terms of how it works or what you can expect to do or what issues you deal with? Are there ways in which this year will be different from the previous years?
This sort of goes to your questions about the Gates memoir. It gives you some perspective. You can separate the signal from the noise. What's just Washington noise and what really matters. And that really helps. That's a great energy saver. You don't get worked up about things that you know are going to be fleeting or aren't going to matter in the long run.
So like if this had happened in the 2nd year?
I mean, there would be people running around with like chickens with their head cut off, worried about what the press reaction is to such and such book. And now you understand these things are very fleeting, and you deal with them, but you don't lose focus on what actually matters, actually move the ball down the field in terms of what's doing good for people.
How much difference does it make to the White House whether Democrats control the Senate or not? A big difference or not much?
Huge difference. It's very important.
Democrats finally managed to get the mayor's seat back in New York City. You wouldn't have thought it had taken so long. Does Mayor de Blasio's election say anything broader, do you think, about the direction of the Democratic Party elsewhere?
I think that New York is unique in many ways, but the message that Mayor de Blasio used is very similar to what the president's been talking about for a long time, that we're going to have opportunity for all, that we're going to address the idea that the economy should grow from the middle out, not from the top down.
Do you plan to stay here for the whole 8 years?
I plan to stay here for as long as the president will have me. There is a declining, very small number of what we refer to as the originals now, people who started on the very first day of the campaign and have stayed continuously in the White House for all 5 years, which is a sign more of insanity than stamina. As hard as this job is, it's a pretty amazing thing to walk into every day.
Dan Pfeiffer, thanks for joining us on Capitol Download.
Thank you, Susan.